Hello, hello. I haven't recorded any videos or posted any videos on here in a very, very long time. I've been extremely busy. I've been working a lot and also focusing on my writing because I'm in the process of writing my book called The Angel House. But I wanted to tune in for a little while with Mother Gaia, with our Mother Earth, to find out something from her about what we're or have been experiencing in our world lately, and specifically about climate changes and agendas out there, and yeah, what's actually going on, and if it's really true that what we're watching or what we're receiving, what we hear other people talk about, because it can be sometimes very confusing, right? Because you get information left, right, and center. And I think a lot of us have removed themselves from social media or access social media only very rarely. A lot of us have also stopped watching the news, right? Because we know that they're only sharing with us what they want us to think or believe in. And so that's very biased. It's not really news, it's very biased stuff. And a lot of this information sometimes causes so much anxiety that it's really not worth it to engage with it because our lives are busy enough and there's things enough going on in our own little world. And so I wanted to tune in and ask Mother Gaia herself, because I sometimes feel that our human mind gets so manipulated and so programmed by the things that we're picking up on in our environment, what other people think or what other people want us to think, that it's really hard to know what the actual truth is here and to have a different perspective on things, because I just don't want to believe in any kind of narratives because I see them as just one side of a coin, right? I always like to see the bigger picture and the bigger truth in everything that there is. And so I tuned in yesterday and I just had a couple questions I asked Mother Gaia directly. So how this works is I tune into her, I ask questions, and I receive answers that are usually very, very simple. It's in a very simple language. Mainly because my conscious mind, my prefrontal cortex is not working right when I'm in that state. And so the language coming through is super, super simple. And so today I sat down and I rewrote this whole thing in ways that makes better sense to us on a conscious level so that we can understand what she actually wanted to say by this. I added a few little things just because I realized I didn't ask all the questions I really wanted to ask, because again, when you're in that state, your thinking isn't really working the way that it should. And I received a couple more insights as well. So the best way for me to do this is actually just read it out to you the way that I wrote it out today and share this message with you this way. And I'm just going to pull this up. So you're going to see me staring at the screen for a little bit, and that's just because I'm reading it out to you. Okay, so this is Mother Gaia's channeling from September the 12th, which was yesterday. So the question that I first asked her was, what is going on in our world at the moment, and why does there seem to be always so much drama, right? So the answer that I received was, life has become so complex that there now are so many confusing beliefs. Instead of the once very peaceful and simple beliefs, people now have access to so much information that causes them to not find that peace within themselves. Seeking answers outside of themselves and being impatient when the answers don't satisfy them leads eventually to unhappiness with themselves and the world. Gaia talks about the idea of sacrifice over doing what makes you happy. So if we see what we do as a sacrifice, it will always lead to unhappiness. Do something because you see that it is good and it makes you happy. She says that treating each other with kindness is what makes her happy. So she's referring to times in human history where people sacrificed their children to her to keep her calm and happy, right? She says what makes her truly happy is your kindness to other creations on this planet. So her children getting along. It's like any mother's greatest vision for her own kids is for her kids to just get along. And it's the same way with Mother Gaia. I asked her about the state of the earth, like climate change, garbage in the oceans, and all these things. She says, the best way to reduce garbage is not to make it. I mean, obviously, when humanity began to create unnatural things, the problem began, which began when humanity created larger gatherings of tribes and made cities. The mass productions created the problem. She mentioned that she doesn't see things going back to how it once was, but that the planet and her children will find ways to deal with the issues. She says that when we create unnatural things, life becomes unsustainable. She will adapt to the new circumstances over time. She also mentions that there are technologies that are not being utilized that could reduce climate change and garbage creation by large, but it's not being used because of some individuals' greed. I think what she may be talking about is some of the 0-point energy techniques that apparently have been created by Nikola Tesla already. And I know actually personally of a man who is working on something exactly like that. And I just wanted to quickly share a vision that I had in the past years ago about the future and energy sourcing. And what I saw was a box that would hang in everybody's house. And it has like literally 1 or 2 buttons on it, and you just push on and off. And when it's on, it creates all the electricity, all the energy that your house needs to run itself. I don't even know exactly if it's really electricity, but it's a power source that you just literally push with 1 button. It's either on or off. And it's not that anything that has to be sourced from the ground, or it has to be like cut down, or it has to be, it's not oil, it's not gas, it's not anything like that. That is a very interesting thing. And when I mentioned this to this man that I know who's working on a technology like that, he said, that's actually exactly what I'm working on. That's exactly what I'm working on. So it's really, really cool when these visions get confirmed by other people. So he's a very intelligent man. I'm sure he can figure this out. The problem is always, how are you going to market these kind of devices and put it out there, right? Because again, like Mother Gaia says, it's individual greed that is not letting us utilize this kind of technology, right? It could be on different levels, could be government, it could be the people who have the companies that sell oil and gas and all that, power plants, right? And that maybe they don't want it out there. But also what comes to mind is people who have invented these technologies and they're trying to patent it or do whatever you got to do to be able to get your money out of it, right? She says, and this actually came to me years ago already, it's not about you. Like if you have that technology, think about the greater good instead of thinking about how much money that you're going to make on this. Okay, so this is just something to consider in case that you're somebody who is creating this kind of technology. Okay, I'll continue. Life will always go on, she says, because that is how it is designed. However, the flow of natural life has been inhibited by the ones who are anti-life. If left untouched, life finds its natural way to deal with new circumstances all on its own. She mentions that much of what we call global warming or global weather changes are normal progressions of her ecosystem. However, she acknowledges that humans have contributed to changes in her ecosystem. However, that the changes are still considered normal in her perspective, as she does not see human beings as unnatural or not worthy of existing like some of you believe. I love that perspective. I always felt the same way. She is going through a natural transition, which we can help to shift or adopt. She is saying that we can help her on an individual basis by simply raising our consciousness and expanding self-awareness. Right? We always feel like we can't do anything. We feel so powerless watching the world just go on, and like I can't do anything about anything, right? But she says that you can on an individual basis by raising your own consciousness and expanding self-awareness. She says that your higher awareness contributes to higher intelligence overall. So one way to do this is to meditate and stop running around seeking that which is within you. So it's already, answers are within you, peace is within you, just gotta like sit still and allow it. She also mentions to travel less and stay more home or closer to home to reduce emissions. So like this idea of being more sustainable in a place where we're at, instead of, you know, driving and flying all over the place all the time, right? And find ways to live sustainably and comfortably in the place where you're at. She also sees a trend of people working more than is compatible with living a fulfilling life. She mentions that when we work more, we feed more of that monster, the machine that drives all of this. It will snowball and get bigger the more you feed it. She mentions to work with what you have instead of always seeking more to satisfy the unmet needs. So when you raise consciousness and self-awareness, you will start to be able to meet your own needs, right? You will stop looking for that to be filled through working more money, more things, more this, more that. Because if you do that more all the time, you're actually feeding this monster. So I asked her how global leaders or the government help. You know, what's their contribution? She says that they don't, or that they won't. They're like 1,000 ants running around in all directions. That's actually the imagery that she gave me. Too many people have either too much or too little to say, and nothing ever gets done properly. However, what I also like to see with ants is that they do get things done. Like ants are very sufficient at getting things done, but they usually just have like one agenda and one agenda only. So they're just serving their own agenda. Maybe this is kind of what she means as well, right? So what she said is, do it yourself. Rely on yourself more than you rely on other people, especially on like bigger bodies, you know. She mentions that we are connected to a monster. So I wanted to know more about that. She says to disengage from this mass connection. So she calls the monster a mass connection. I believe she was speaking about the social online connection and the media, but I might be wrong. The term mass hypnosis popped up. And when you disengage, she says, you won't be affected by it, or at least you won't contribute to the issue. Focus on your own home, your own town, your family and loved ones. You cannot help the world by engaging in its drama, but you can help what is in your capacity, which is what is in your immediate environment. So instead of trying to run all over the place, trying to, or feeding into the drama of the world and the media and the news and what people are talking about, to focus more on what is in your capacity to do as the person that you are, right? And to focus more on your immediate environment. She also mentions the word entity, how that we feed this entity. And with entity, she means that anything we focus on a larger scale becomes its own entity. So it takes on a life on its own. The more you feed it with your attention focus, the bigger it will get. Any kind of narrative or agenda has the power to become a controlling force, even what you consider to be righteous. So when we take sides, this is what happens in duality or polarity, we take a side, we actually also feed something that eventually has the power to become just yet another entity that's purpose will be to control and to dominate. So I'm asking her what the purpose of all this, these narratives and agendas and different sides. And she says the purpose is balance. Narratives exist to cancel each other out, to keep balance, and to give perspective. All narratives are neither good nor bad. Because I'm like, isn't this bad? She's like, no, it's neither good nor bad. she's acknowledging now, okay, we're going into further something else here, but I just wanted to mention balance. Narrative exists to cancel each other out, to keep balance. All narratives are neither good nor bad. They're created to give perspectives. So we need perspective, because perspective allows us to have a greater understanding of what is going on within ourselves and also on this planet, right? So she's acknowledging the floods, the earthquakes, and volcano outbreaks. So I was just sort of mentally asking her about it, and she's acknowledging it. She says she's just shifting and stretching, and it's natural. She says some of the catastrophic events were also human fault. I asked her about the Hawaiian incident, actually on Maui. She says it was natural and also not natural. So my first insight when somebody asked me about this was that it was natural. And then when I tuned in with her, she said, but it's also not natural. She's like, so it's natural, but it's also not natural. She says, it was not what some people think it was. It was not created for a land grab, like some people think. However, some people will benefit from others' misfortune, and this is natural. So I'm asking about direct energy weapons like lasers, which is something that a lot of people were saying, right? We call them conspiracy theorists. And again, I know where the term came from, so we don't really have to discuss this. But I'm asking about direct energy weapons like lasers. And she's reminding me of an old vision I once had from many, many years ago, where I saw lasers coming out of the sky, burning homes and cities. Many people have told the story that the town of Maui was destroyed by such weapons. So my first insight was that it was a natural occurrence, and she reminded me that. So the reason why I was questioning my own future vision was because, you know, like I've seen things in the past that have come true, and then I've seen things in the past that came true, but that essentially weren't true. It was just things that I saw happening in the world, things people believed in, right? And so my question was, now, was it direct energy weapons or was it not, right? So it says here, my first insight was that it was a natural occurrence, and she reminded me that my ability to see the future isn't always truth, but often what I am perceiving, watching, or picking up on what other people believe in the future to be true. So I sometimes pick up on images that are circling around on the internet in the future. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It just means somebody wants us to think that this is what it's true, right? I asked about COVID because my future vision of the pandemic like years ago was correct. And I was wondering why the vision of the energy weapons used on a city was not. So she tells me that the insight about COVID was correct and it happened. However, some of the information I had received was about what I was watching online and what I saw other people do or believe in. And the same it is with direct energy weapons. So because I remember when I was looking online, I saw somebody circling around an image of a laser coming out of the sky and burning stuff. And it's very likely that this is what I picked up on, right? So I picked up on what the collective is thinking about because they are feeding it with great emotions. And if you've noticed, because I noticed, I think we all noticed, the last 3 years, the amount of what we call conspiracy theories have increased largely. So the more of that thinking is in the collective, the more that you will pick up on that information as well, psychically, right? With that said, I do want to put in there that a lot of the so-called conspiracy theories were actually accurate. A lot of people who have predicted things about the future that at the time other people said, well, you're a conspiracy theorist, this is not true, have actually come true. You know, if I at the time would have said in 6 months we're going to go through a pandemic, and the pandemic, the virus is called Corona Noel, if I told people that, they would have thought I was nuts. Right, back in the fall of 2019, right? And a lot of people at the beginning of the pandemic said they're going to do what do you call them? vaccine passports and stuff like that. But in fact, they were creating vaccine passports, right? It actually happened just a couple months later. So we have to be very careful with calling things and people conspiracy theorists or conspiracies, because every conspiracy has some kind of truth to it. Maybe it's a truth from the past, or maybe it's a truth that is about to happen, but they all have essentially some kind of truth to it. And though I don't want to feed into it, because yet I would be feeding another entity and they will create a life on its own, and I don't want to do that either. But we do have to be observers of what we are observing and not get emotionally involved and engage in it too much, but to just observe and watch how it unfolds and how it's what comes out of it in the end, right? The last thing we want to do is to create whole realities around a belief or a so-called conspiracy or an idea that later on will turn out not to be true, because then we created an entity, then we created something people put their energy and their focus on, right? And it just became bigger and it snowballs and becomes a big problem. And that is something that we try to avoid. So she is acknowledging that what we call direct energy weapons exist and they are being used. However, she mentions that she is not worried about such toys. She is more concerned about some bigger weapons humanity has created and has actively used in the past. She says that those types of weapons have the power to create irreversible climate changes and change the path of humanity and all life on Earth forever. They are much more destructive. All of the care we put into cleaning up the earth and finding ways to live more sustainable will be destroyed within a short time if those weapons are being utilized. So, why would anyone want to do such a thing? I'm asking her. She says, they are possessed by an entity that we also call a mind virus. They no longer care because they realize that they are mortal and they're jealous of the life that is going on, or the life that keeps going on. They're jealous of that infinite being that we all are, that we keep recycling ourselves, becoming, being alive. And when a being is separating itself from that consciousness, it begins to realize how mortal it is and that it will never be a part of that continuous stream of consciousness. These beings are anti-life and will stop at nothing to feed their monster. They are children of mine that have gone rogue. So I asked her, how can we stop them? She basically mentions that she's already kind of mentioned this. She says, you can raise your consciousness as it will affect the level of consciousness of the rest of my children. Don't fight or get reactive. It's what they want. Take your focus off their agendas altogether. Focus on you and what you came here for. Like chess. So she's showing me a chess game. Like chess, you put your players into the right positions to checkmate. No fights required, just simply strategy and patience. Okay. So to me, that reminds me a lot of just disengaging emotionally from those narratives, agendas, and ideas and entities that they're trying to create, right? Remember that the unreal can never sustain itself. So anything created artificially can never sustain itself. It's like plastic cannot make itself come alive, right? It's like AI cannot keep itself going. It needs someone to sustain the machinery, right? It's got to have somebody in the background running things or maintaining the machinery itself, right? Real life takes its own sustenance from what is in its environment and grows and develops, even if everything is destroyed. Right? Just as simple as bacteria will just keep going. Life will always find a way to keep going because, and this is important, it is connected to what you call God or higher consciousness or herself, right? The only power source that is not within that which is not real. Okay, and this is why this so-called entity that has separated itself from the source of all creation is so jealous, because it's disconnected. It can no longer reconnect. And so it knows when it passes away, it's dead. So what a lot of people do, even in real life, is when they realize that they cannot have what they want, is they try to destroy the very thing that they can't have, right? This is why sometimes in some places in the world, we see men throwing acid on women's faces or bodies, right? Or burn them alive. Why? Because they realize they can no longer control them. They can no longer have that, right? And so they try to destroy it. And this is what we call a mind virus, right? So I hope that you enjoyed this channel with Mother Gaia, and I'll do more of these at some point. And if you enjoyed this, just subscribe and hit the notification button, because I don't do it on a regular day. I do it when I feel called to do it, when I have time to do it. And I hope to see you in the comments, and let me know what you thought, and share it if you feel that it is important to share and that you're inspired by what I shared today with you. And I'll see you soon, talk to you soon, and enjoy your time. Bye-bye.